Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 2 o'clock, so we'll start with the meeting. Welcome to today's Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Today's date is Wednesday, the 15th of June. Please ensure that your mobile phones are on to silent. I don't need to name the culprits. And we'll get on with the agenda. The first item on the agenda is apologies, and we've currently had Councillor Hudson, Councillor Ian Lawson and Councillor Ross Ward. Are there any others to put on the list? I think everybody else is here. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. I couldn't get into the car park.
Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay, that is a no. Minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of May. Are we happy that those are a true record and I can sign them off? Can we have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Saeed. And we'll go straight on to item 4 then, which is the Highways Transformation Programme update. And we've got the Cabinet member, Councillor David Williams here, and we've also got James Bailey present. Welcome, gentlemen. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. We're very pleased to come here today to discuss the possible ways that we are going to look at the way we will deliver highways in the future. As you know, we are going through a current transformation of our highways department, including restructure, and we're looking at different ways we are going to work. And as part of that, the way that we deliver the actual work on the ground is something that we've been looking into, and we're looking at for a bespoke type of delivery model that will suit the needs of Staffordshire. It might not suit everywhere, but it will suit the needs of Staffordshire. So we've got a small presentation that James is going to go through. That will give you some information about what we're looking at doing as of the fact of what types of delivery models we've been looking at and how we've got to reach to this point. I can assure the members at this moment in time, no definite way of work going forward has been decided, and that's why it's going to be very useful for members to be able to input now, because that input will be utilised in our future deliberations in the way that we go forward. So I'm going to hand over to James, who will take you through a small presentation, and then we'll open for questions. Thank you, Chair.
Afternoon, everyone. Shall I crack straight on, Chair? Yeah, thank you.
I'm laughing, James, because you're in charge of the clicker. It never goes well, does it?
Yeah, I've got it over here, keeping it safe. Okay, thank you. So since we were last here with the previous update, and I think it was the 14th of April, the transformation programme has been going on at great guns. Over 350 staff across the current Highways Partnership model have been engaged through a series of sessions around the transformation programme. The feedback on that has been really, really overwhelmingly positive. Very, very supportive of the new vision for the customer-focused highway service. Very excited, as you completely understand, around the extra investment that's been going into the service, and very, very keen to get engaged in what the redesign of that future model is going to look like. Since, excuse me, using the previous feedback and steer that we got from Select Committee, together with feedback from Cabinet and the feedback from the staff who've been engaged, we've been moving forward towards or assessing those previously shortlisted potential delivery options that we'd looked at as being the types of delivery models that were going to deliver the County Council's new vision for highways going forward. But we took all that feedback from those various sessions, including the previous feedback from Select Committee, and we've been moving that towards what, as Councillor Williams has just described, as a more bespoke hybrid model, which is really trying to take the best out of each of those different options, and I'll come back to that in a minute. As well as moving towards that new model with some extra investment that Cabinet are putting into the highway service, we started to redesign the service around that model. So some of the to-be transferred roles and functions we took back at the start of the year, we're starting to redesign how they're going to work in the new model going forward. And then obviously there's the mobilising the capital investment that's been made for this year as well, which will be delivering around 18,000 defect repairs or pothole repairs this year, treating around 50 kilometres of extra road surface repairs and treatments, and also funding 2 pilots, one around the right first time repair type solutions, and also a community response capability. So there's some pilot work that's been developed with the extra investment. So just going into this hybrid model, as we call it. So you'll recall that previously we talked about 3 different options that had been shortlisted from work that we'd done with Future Highways Research Group, which would give the various controls and assurances that we were looking for the model going forward. What we've been doing is taking that feedback, say from staff and from select committee and informal cabinet as well, and we've developed now this, or moving towards this hybrid operating model, as we call it, which gives us the best out of all of those different shortlisted options rather than any individual one. So under this new model, which I will give a little bit more information on in a minute, what it really does is it retains a strategic partner involvement, which gives us the resilience of having a private sector strategic partner. It gives us the operating efficiency that they can provide, and they also give us a scale of economy and their buying power by having that model in there. By setting up and strengthening the new commissioning client and contract management capability, that gives us the control and assurances over the various functions and the right things being done in the right way, which is crucial. And then by going to what we're calling a function by function sort of commission, that'll give us the driving of performance, the innovation, the moving forward with continuous improvements, which is what we really desire as well. So that's essentially what that's moving towards. So what that looks like in practice is illustrated on this page here. So we take, under this model, we've got a complete political oversight and control, setting policy, direction and budget, within to the second tier, which is the County Council's newly designed intelligent client commissioning capability, and then within that, underneath that, individual functions or function by function for different delivery models. So if I give one example there, if you take function A, these are just illustrative, they're not absolutely just for illustration purposes. But if you took function A, for example, we use a strategic partner to manage the County Council's highway workforce, which is currently local staff, local employees, local operatives who work in the County Council's highway depots, local people doing that job. They make up about 50% of the workforce, which is the workforce which provides that sort of critical mass and core to be able to deliver things like the winter service, the winter gritting operations. But then the rest of the time, in the summer, this time of year, when we're in the main road repair season, that's topped up by local subcontractors, local SMEs, who provide that top-up facility. So that's just one example for function A. And what that does around function A, it says that for that particular activity, we set through the political direction and policy, through the County Council's new intelligent client commissioning capability, for that specific function, we set a clear budget, clear specifications, clear service levels, performance management framework that's bespoke to that operation around cost, quality, customer satisfaction, and then we set the delivery model. And we monitor that delivery model, benchmarking with our historic performance and with the best performing other local authorities for that particular function, and get the assurance that the right things are being done and we're achieving the best possible bang for a buck in terms of quality, cost, value for money. And then the crucial thing with this is that there's no sort of guarantee for that delivery model. It's only if that function continues to perform at that acceptable level that then that delivery model will continue. And if it's not performing and it doesn't improve within a suitable timescale, then we have complete flexibility to change the delivery model for whatever that particular function is. So if it was routine maintenance or grass cutting or surface treatments or major projects, that kind of thing. Does that excuse me, I'm conscious I'm a bit hoarse. So under that new operating model, the next thing to consider is about in terms of how we procure and how do we get that strategic partnership, that strategic partner on board. So the current arrangements with Amy, the contract comes to an end in October 2024. We're not sitting around waiting for that contract to change. We are starting to transition towards a kind of this kind of mixed, that hybrid economy model that I've just talked about. But there is a fundamental decision to still make, which Cabinet will be considering in July, around what happens to the I+ contracts in terms of that relationship with Amy from 2024 onwards. So the options are summarised on this page here. No, apologies, it's a bit of a busy slide. Hopefully you've had a chance to read this beforehand. But the arrangements are that moving into this new operating model and beyond 2024, the easiest, simplest way of having a strategic partner on board would be to retain the services of Amy through a renegotiated contract arrangement based upon that new hybrid operating model that I've just talked about, where you're talking about performance under each individual function. So no guarantees of work. If a function isn't performing, then it changes, and you've got complete flexibility and capability to do that. That would be the cheapest, fastest solution to get into that model. It's kind of tried and tested with a known provider. You know what their capabilities are. Amy themselves very, very much up for that option. They're very keen to be engaged. Obviously, they're very keen to be continue to work with the County Council, and very keen to be held accountable on a very transparent, objective performance management system that I've just talked about on that function by function basis. And they've already started to go away and build up some work around what their offer would be if the County Council was minded to retain their services going forward. Having said that, we also recognise there are some reputational issues and so on that would have to be addressed as part of any sort of ongoing relationship with Amy, and that is identified on that form. Now, if any of those kind of things prove to be red lines and insurmountable, then there are two other options. One would be only to retain Amy on the type of activities which they're more widely recognised as being good at, like the major projects and so on. That is an option. Means probably a little bit less, well, it's quite a lot more less attractive to Amy in terms of what their commitment would be to the arrangement. It's less attractive to the market generally in terms of trying to onboard another provider. And obviously it would mean a more fragmented arrangement, which for the County Council would be more complex and more expensive to try and manage. So the third option would actually be a bit more radical, which would just be to say simply procure and go back to market for a new provider altogether, rather than have a kind of mixed, foot in two camps arrangement. So that, again, all three options, perfectly achievable. Obviously procuring a new provider would be quite disruptive to decommission the existing arrangement, procure with a new provider and all the costs associated with that, and then the disruption about mobilising with a new model going forward. But they're all options that are on the table. So the conclusion really, just to wrap up, is that the new operating model, together with that investment and the new ways of working, are cracking on, and we're very, very confident they're absolutely going to revolutionise the way that the highway service performs. Gives us a lot of confidence around that. In terms of who that strategic partner option would be, or provider would be in the future, the three options I've just ran through are all deliverable, all achievable. We've got plenty of time to work through those, but as an officer, being objective about it in terms of the cost of disruption and so on, retaining the services of Amy under this renegotiated arrangement under a new operating model which holds them accountable very clearly and objectively for each individual performance is clearly the fastest, cheapest, easiest solution to get to. So in terms of next steps, today obviously taking further steer from Select Committee, had really helpful steer and direction previously, which has got us to the point where we're at now. Based upon today's feedback, the intention is that we should be, we're still on track to go for a full Cabinet decision on the 20th of July. That's quite a challenge in terms of timescales to get that written up, but that is the programme or direction of travel at the moment. Once we can get that decision agreed, it means that we can finalise the rest of the transformation programme and change programme, and we understand what the complexity and timescales are involved in what that looks like. And that is really, really important. There's a lot of people, over 300 people involved in this, and clearly as soon as we can get some clarity around what that future model looks like and we can put a change plan with a timeline to it, that gives people a lot more assurance around what that future means for them and what that looks for them, and they can engage in it with more confidence. Leaving uncertainty and ambiguity around these things is really quite unsettling for people, and we're in a very competitive marketplace at the minute, so that's not somewhere we want to be really. It leaves us quite vulnerable to potentially losing good talent from across the partnership. And that's it really. The final slide is just some questions we'd like to pose to committee for your consideration and feedback, please.
Thanks, James. Can you just go back to slide 5, please? That one, that's the one, yeah. For me, I get why we want to retain the Amy contract. There's less risk, there's more green, less amber and only one red on the lines that we can see. But for me, that one in red at the bottom is the biggest one. Political confidence, not just for us, but for our customers outside that report stuff. The reporting system is a bit clunky at times. It's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. And the big question for me is rebranding of the highway service and how we're going to build that confidence with our voters, for want of a better phrase, our electorate, whichever party you belong to, because they're not confident with Amy at the moment, and I think probably every single one of us in this room isn't confident. So what are we doing and how are we going to make that better is the question, I suppose.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think some of the issues, like you say, there's a lot of political or personal confidence in what Amy can or can't achieve, and actually some of that is a perception issue. And I'm not disputing that or having a go at anybody who actually put the contract together or actually helped set it up. But the way that we've done the changes so far, and the way that we're delivering already has already meant that within the contract it's actually been able to work better. So you will see that there is a lot more activity out there in areas where we've wanted it. Amy's original dictate was to do as much as you can for this amount of money, and that's exactly what they did, but it might have been that that was then carried out in areas where they could get more of a quantitative amount rather than what we would want, and in some respects and on certain times as well there was a quality issue. So those have all been addressed so far, and I think that I have to say that I've noticed a lot of difference out there. Also with the perception issue with members and the information going out. So when you get told that actually you could temporarily fill potholes up to 50 times the same amount as it costs to do it once properly, you can see why they're on with just the sheer volume of defects on the network, that certain things had to be done in that way. So what we're trying to do now is arrest our decline of our highways, and we're putting in new models of working. And if Amy want to stay with us and are prepared to take on the new constraints within a different contractual obligation that we are looking to put in, that gives us the opportunity then to address that on an annual basis and see if they're performing or not, and then change things. As it stands, we couldn't do just that right at this moment in time, but this new one would. And hopefully this would increase member and the public confidence. One of the most simple things that we did last year was we had £150,000 from an underspend on another bit of budget, and with that we utilised that for some extra gullying cleaning that had been long-standing issues. And I know thanks to lots of local members who also helped out, but that was a massive success for £150,000 with a different body, and that was through Amy from getting the people who worked through it, and all of those systems went on, and they were trained in the pad, so all that data went onto our system as well about the gullies, so we've already started to transition over and change the way that we're working out there. Quality inspectors now we're recruiting, and we've brought them back in house so that they are being told about what they're expected, and you'll notice as well that as we've now got the extra funding for our revenue stream, that the community highways teams will also be bolstered, as well as the inspectorate will be bolstered to improve. So along the lines really is that we're not saying we're going to go either way or any way at the moment, because we want to know what the offer is, But what we are saying is that we're not counting anything out, because what we're determined to get is the best outcome for Staffordshire, and that's why I call it this bespoke. It will be very bespoke, whichever way we go. And it's not a case of here's the money, you get on with it. We have already brought in a lot of control, and that will now increase no matter what model that we go with. And I'm hoping that members will also be able to work more closely and more often with their highways teams, and they'll be also informed about more things going on in their areas, so that they can go and see what we're doing and report back themselves. As I say, there's a lot of a perception issue, and I'm not defending Amy for anything, but as I say, I think what we need to ensure is that we do it from the strict rules of data and realism, rather than what people perceive to actually what we can achieve.
Thanks, David. Saeed?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment about Amy, actually, that I'm a bit concerned with the whole new procurement process. If you want to open it up, when the money is tight, we'll be losing out £1.5 million. Am I right? Yeah, at least. So can I just urge Cabinet member through you, Chair, is there any chance with our members, with the Amy, can we sit down like an open forum, an open and honest discussion with the Amy, why we are not satisfied with their service and where is the perceptions issues comes and how we can overcome it? Can I urge you to consider this one through the Cabinet member, to sit down solely for the Amy, how we can improve the service? And most often, for your kind attention as well, Amy got the contract, but end up with the subcontractors. And I'm not sure how far, their quality of work and actual Amy as well. But we are a layman, we don't know how the quality assessed or anything. So I would way forward, I want to have a proper discussion with Amy and to share our concerns and why we are not simply happy with them. And also I know it's a public meeting, we need to focus on there are so many success in our areas which remain unnoticed. And always bad news goes spread so quickly, but we don't get that the county as a whole, the positive story as a fair share, I would say. And can I just also point out page 10 of your slides, when your operations, yes, we need the revolutions. You mentioned with the revolutionary. I would be grateful if you can explain this one with an example. And very often we see they fill the potholes, they do the job, but within 2 meters or 3 meters down the line, there is another potholes, it is left behind. But on an ideal world, where the taxpayers is reasonably concerned, because at the end of the day, this is their money and we are the custodians. And when you call the same company, the same contractor again, they're going to bill us for the call out, about 700 or 1200, whatever it is. So this is the issue. If you can kindly clarify this one. Now, what sort of regulations? Just this example. And I don't want to confine my, the comment with my district or my divisions. It is the issue is all about. I got the line from you, Chair. So I would welcome any comment from this.
So, James, David, did you get all that? Do you want to do with the last one first?
I probably will do the last one first. You'll be aware as well that we've put 1.5 million into the Right First Time trial, which is exactly what you're describing. So at the moment, obviously potholes are categorised in 1, 2 and 3s, ones being the most serious and they need to be repaired immediately within the 24 hours, going down to category 3s. There isn't an actual time limit on category 3 potholes at this moment in time, just due to the sheer number and volume and not wanting to try to promise things that we can't achieve. But what we are doing is putting the 1.5 million into the Right First Time pilot. That will do a small section and cover the fact that they will go and they will do that one pothole, but those that are around it. it doesn't mean that we've ever actually asked to call them out each time and they get paid each time. That doesn't work in that way. The contract was, there's the money, that's what you achieve. So the call out part isn't there. When it comes to the part about Amy, about talking with them, we have no problem with that. We were due to have a meeting on Monday, but just due to sheer volume of sickness, we weren't able to have that. But we're trying to get our initial meeting with Amy officers to discuss what they would want to offer before we go back, and they would then bring it to yourselves to say this is what the offer is and this is where we would suggest. I have no problem if you would want to speak to Amy, but at the moment I think it would be worthwhile for us to see whether or not Cabinet would want to actually envisage extending the contract or not, or in which way we would want to go, because as I say, we're trying to get the best out for Amy. I can't remember the second one now.
You've covered the second.
So you have to cover the second one, thank you. But I also wanted to agree with Councillor Hussain in the fact that we aren't celebrating the stuff that we do get done. And it is a real shame, really, because there are a lot of projects out there that really haven't been celebrated enough. Lichfield's got a brand new bypass that has made it so that vehicles aren't going through especially HGVs, and not going through the city centre anymore. And here in Stafford, we've got a SWAR that was a massive project, has taken over 15 years to deliver from its inception, and is a great project that we've done with a huge amount of on-site material being recycled and overcoming such technical barriers as putting a bypass over a bog and using a new type of piling system. So there's that to achieve what we're achieving, and due to the weather as well, we've been able to get in and start doing our pothole repairs and our pothole addressing the pothole blitz, as we tried to call it, as much quicker, because the frosts haven't been as bad this year, so we got on with doing other things. And I have to thank our teams for that, because obviously they have to change from going on constant night call to coming back on days. So I think there are many positives out there that you've said, and we are trying to address them, but clearly the way forward is going to be the best way for Staffordshire, and that's what we would want to achieve.
Saeed, did that cover everything you asked? I know there was there something else?
Yes, Chair, and just would like to echo and pass our thanks to our highway team, especially given the weather, even a day and night, what they are doing across the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just firstly comment, I don't see any point in us meeting with Amy. I think that we have, as a council, got a cabinet and a cabinet member who is responsible for delivering what we want. And so providing we communicate with the cabinet member to make it absolutely clear what our expectations are, I don't think we should confuse the situation by having 60-odd members who are all individually wanting to talk to Amy, all with different views on how we might deliver. I think that we need to have some sanity in the way that that operates. But can I then just come on to various issues? I have a retired lawyer in my division, and my retired lawyer, every couple of days, comes on to me to give me contractual reasons for why we should immediately terminate the Amy contract. I don't pass those on to the cabinet member because I think that they don't take us any further forward. But one has to say that when he is talking about failure to deliver or the quality of delivery, I think that he's got a very good case. And I think those are the issues that we need to look at. I wonder, and I do accept the problems that we've got of changing contractors or doing something different, but I do seriously wonder whether Amy have had an adequate amount of time to show the quality of their delivery. And I think in many ways they have shown that they're not up to the mark. I think that Amy, if we say that we've got until 2004, excuse me, they've got time to start to pull their socks up and have better delivery. But in one area alone, I have one end of a road which had got potholes that needed repairing. I had a report from Amy, and the Cabinet members are aware of this. We had a report from Amy that all this work had been completed, and it hadn't, because they had not completed the whole length of the road. And that pothole in the area of the road that hasn't been completed was only repaired 6 months ago. Now, that doesn't seem to me to be the sort of quality of service that we ought to be expecting. And so I don't feel satisfied with that. I wonder whether we ought to be looking at some form of regional delivery on what we're doing. I know this is not directly highways, but it seemed very odd to me that I had an oak tree that came down in the middle of the night that blocked a road in my division, and the people that came down to move it, I had two teams of tree surgeons to shift this oak, but they came from Stoke-on-Trent. Why is it when we've got perfectly adequate people locally that can do this, do we employ people that come a distance? It doesn't seem to make sense to me. Very near to my home, I've got an A road, the Chester Road, which probably...
Councillor Smith, can I stop you there? We don't want to get into divisions and in my division, so can you ask the question specifically on
I'm coming
the
on to those.
Well, can you come on to it now then, please?
I would look at the Chester Road, which has just been completely resurfaced, and the quality of that being done by Walsall is extremely fine, and I think that it's worth having a look at. It doesn't seem to me that when we're looking at complete road surfacing, we get that sort of quality of workmanship, and I think that we ought to look at that. I really think that we need to take a long, hard look at what we're doing, what the delivery is. Maybe we might get an analysis of the complaints that we have about the service of Amy, and to take a long, hard look about whether, even with the difficulties, we might feel that Amy have come to the end of the line. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. We'll take those on board. I think the thing is, when we're talking about failure to deliver it, again, it's very much down to what the contract and what was expected at the time, and those are changing currently. So I take Councillor Smith's points on board, and we'll put those into our deliberations.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, James and Councillor Williams. 3 comments. Certainly, I absolutely agree with Councillor Williams that how the contract's written and how we manage it are the most important things. That's what we have to address. But from a general public perception viewpoint, I think the 2 things that certainly land in my inbox more than anything else are grass cutting and potholes. And I know you're addressing potholes, but could you also look at grass cutting? Because it's a visible thing, people see it, they don't actually understand about no cutting in early May and stuff like that. They just expect us to instantly mow the lawn, mow the verges. I mean, people have come up with all sorts of strange ideas, like putting goats and things like that on it. But I do think that addressing that slightly better than it is at the moment might cut down some of the problems into inbox. Not suggesting it will, I'm just saying it might. But that's all I have to, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I completely agree. I think part of the public perception is that so grass cutting, especially in the Newcastle area, is under review, and I know that the officers are working hard. There has been some issues there, and I think we've got other issues elsewhere. It has been one of those, what they call the perfect storm for growing and so forth, but that is being addressed. And there is no straight quick fix. We couldn't just put money in because there isn't the capacity out there to do things. So I agree with that. The pothole issue is one where we're trying to address that with our trial of the right first time. But to actually go to that full on is about £7 million, and we just don't have it. So that's why we're trialling it with £1.5 million. And I will remind everybody that, as well as the fact that 8.7 million was removed from our budget by DFT, this cabinet decided to borrow and invest 15.5 to cover that and try and address some of the other issues. Currently, the inflationary costs of materials and obviously with the fuel implications and costs for manpower and vehicles has also made a detrimental cut into what we can achieve. But what we are trying to do is the best that we can. But I completely agree with Councillor Hutton, and we need to get over a perception, and I think that's why when Councillor Hussain said about us celebrating what we do achieve, and when we do get things right, we just don't do that enough, and that's what we are trying to change as well.
I think on that, if we had a quarterly thing that we could stick on our Facebook pages, I know you do put weekly stats out, but something, this is what, in our 28,000 kilometres of roads, this is what we've done in the last 3 months. And then we can all stick that on our Facebook pages, and people will ignore it, but it allows me then to point at it and say, but I gave you this information. And a lot of it goes away. So I do think comms could be improved, and maybe you can get one on the comms team to say, look at how we could do it better. Because we do have, as you say, a massive kilometres of road.
Completely agree, which is why all members were asked if they wanted to have the PTTRO information to be able to utilise on their social media to put out where we're doing work. And you'll find you've now got a monthly thing. I've sent it out, I think it was about 4 days ago. So you now have a monthly update bulletin, which you can share on all social media. You only have to click the buttons on the bottom to put it onto Facebook, Twitter and into LinkedIn. That's on there. You can also, it's also got the web, so you can send it through your email. That's being done by the bespoke new comms officer, Jen Whittaker, who's doing a really good job. And within each one of those, you actually get links to be able to go into it in more depth. So you've actually now got a monthly newsletter that you can share with everybody.
Are there any further comments or questions for David or James? So, is that a small one or half a one, Saeed?
Try to do it 36 seconds max. Just a quick comment, actually, especially with utility works and some things, which is not a, the existing pothole, and it's a new defect. Can we expect any further attention and that sort of quality of work? I know this is nothing to direct contract with the AME, but this is something who repair this work and do the connections. Sometimes they leave it on a very poor stage, and quality of work is so poor, which is also true in the Virgin Media, how they did it in our roads.
Let's not name contractors, sorry. I think Saeed has a point there, David. I think who actually goes and checks utility works when they've put back the pavement or put back the road? Because we know that they don't do it as well as they should do. But let's not name contractors in this meeting.
Completely agree, Chair. As members will be aware, or should be aware, that we haven't got the right to refuse utility companies to come in and look after the services underneath the ground. In fact, they have got the right, and they do quite a lot. What we will do, and obviously we've now got the inspectors back in-house, and as I said, we've got the extra revenue, which we'll be having more inspectors. We'll be able to check that on a more regular basis. And I think, is it 2 years guarantee we have on the work they do? I'm also aware of one within the South Staffs area where that work was challenged back by the utility company, who said they thought it was good enough, and we're several years down the road with it still not being mended. So people have asked me for the money, and I'm obviously in dispute with that. I can let the members know that James and I are going to be meeting with much of the utility companies as we can to address this issue. It is a real shame, really, that unfortunately the government doesn't make them, when they go through a pathway, redo the whole path. They only have to do the bit they do, which evidently sinks or has issues when it comes to freezing. But their work should be guaranteed for 2 years, and I'm hoping that I'm not hoping, I know that when utilities are going in, that we will be having our community highways team officers checking and inspecting those sites more, so that we can then call them back and be able to get them to rectify it rather than at the taxpayer's expense.
Thank you, David. So if there are no further comments or questions, obviously there's no recommendations today other than that James and his team will be back in July as well. I think yes, you're on the agenda for July. Thank you for your attendance this afternoon, and thank you for the update. And I think we've covered the two last questions, which were to input any further improvements to the model, and to discuss anything that we think that you've missed. And I think everybody that wants to has had the opportunity to do that. So thank you very much for your attendance. Have a good afternoon. And we'll move straight on to our next agenda item when I can get my laptop working. Agenda item 5, so we'll just wait for the gents at the back to swap over. They've warmed the seats for you. Agenda item 5 is the SEND review, right support, right place, right time, government consultation on the SEND and alternative provision system in England. So welcome to Councillor Jonathan Price, Cabinet Member, and Tim and... Thank you, very welcome. And we'll hand straight over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. As I said, I've got obviously Tim Moss with me and Hallett as well, who's introduced himself. So, on March 29th this year, the government published the SEND review, which is basically the right support, right place, right time, which is a consultation on the special educational needs and disability and alternate provision system in England. A link to the consultation was included within the paper in this pack. This has been required because we all recognise that since the publication of the SEND Code of Practice in 2014, there needs to be reform to improve the outcomes and experiences of children and our young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and to address the inconsistency across the country of the assessments and provision to meet needs and develop the system so that it is financially sustainable. As a consultation, we welcome the opportunity to provide our responses to the proposals and are pleased that this committee is able to contribute towards the responses that we admit. You've had an outline of our response to the proposals, and in general we support the approach taken to deliver the national consistency, but also recognise some of the challenges that are required or are in place to achieve this. We've recently introduced the education banding tool, which matches levels of funding to need, which is promoted within the consultation, as is a digitised education and healthcare plan process, which we have had established for some time. The recognition that increased funding for SEND is necessary, however, the proposal sets out will take several years. Managing demand and financial pressures in the short term aren't addressed. We welcome the focus on improving levels of mainstream inclusion, as referenced in our local area SEND strategy, and we want more children and young people with SEND attending their local mainstream wherever possible, and it is crucial that parents have the confidence in the quality of that local provision. So therefore I'd welcome your views on our initial thoughts to the proposals and your support in helping us formulate our response. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from members? David.
Chairman, I don't want to get into specifics, because I'm sure you'll correct me if I do. But are we satisfied that problems that are brought to this council are dealt with as quickly as they possibly can, so that we get them off the desk as soon as possible, and that the parents, and particularly the children who are affected by sad problems that they often have, are dealt with as quickly as they possibly can. I don't want to draw you into specific problems, but we do have a problem. And could I just add on to that, I think that we ought at Cabinet level to look at when a member raises a problem which is also raised by the Member of Parliament, there can be no response back to the member. The member is effectively excluded from the response until the the council has dealt with the Member of Parliament's query first, which seems to me to be entirely wrong because the pressure is on us as members. I'm trying not to be specific.
I am obviously fully aware of this particular case, but it's one of several that we've received. Do I feel that we've responded in an adequate time in the past? Absolutely not. I believe we are now improving on that front. The particular issue that you raised was unfortunately that some parents will use a scattergun approach. So they'll email me, Tim, possibly Hallett, MP, local member. So we're all trying to respond. So you've got 5, 6, 7 officers and staff all bogged down trying to deal with one response and not aware that other people have been involved. Now, in the past, that inquiry that goes to MPs' inquiries would then be dealt with by the MP, who would either contact the team or go through the local area, the district lead. And I wouldn't be copied in. So I wouldn't be aware of the issues that were going on. Having had a conversation with Cabinet a couple of weeks ago, raising your concerns and mine, those issues have been resolved. I'm now copied into every inquiry, so I can see when something comes in through an MP inquiry door, that I have also been included in that. And if I have been emailed personally or by a member as well, I'm aware that that's being acted upon and which direction that's going. I have already had conversations with officers, and we have agreed that we need to make sure that we respond as quickly as possible to these inquiries. It must be said, some of these inquiries are extremely complicated. You have to look at various other factors and go to other people, family practitioner leads, educational psychologists and others who bring information in, and it's not always easy to compile a proper response within 5 minutes. But I can assure you that this will improve and is already starting to improve because it's something that I am very keen to make sure is working properly. And I certainly took on board your comments. It was already a concern I had, and I am pleased to say that that has now changed, David. I am not going to suggest, though, that we managed to turn around a members' inquiry within 24 to 48 hours because, as I said, some of these things can be extremely complicated, but we will certainly endeavour to make sure we get back to people as quickly as possible.
David, did you want to come back in?
Only just very quickly, just to say that I would want to thank the Cabinet member for the response that we've had and the actions that he's taken. I would just feel that it's not only the child we're concerned about, but the stress to the parents. And when something drags on for months, that stress grows and grows and grows, and probably ends up with the local councillor and an ear being bent very heavily. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for what's been done.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I think we had a really good discussion last time, and I was very pleased that you incorporated so much of what we commented on. Obviously you felt that although we're not experts, we did contribute. I had a query recently which triggers what I'm going to say now. It's about the communications. Now, I don't know, because I haven't been through the SEND process as a parent, how well we signpost what a parent should do. Because this parent, not one of my constituents, who is a different division's constituent, but put on to me because my wife happens to be a SEND teacher. That's, once people know, then that's the way. So I said, well, what have you done? And I took her through the steps that she should do, that I thought. And I said, and I said specifically, do not use a scattergun approach. I said, if you're going to, you can copy other people in, but write directly to one person, copy others in so they're aware of it, and that puts the pressure on one person. Otherwise, you get 5 different people doing a half job on what you really want. So, and she took that advice and went away and never come back, so I assume it's worked. So my comment is, do we signpost well enough to help parents who are worried about their children having a possible send? Thank you.
Ali, did you want to come in there?
If I may, yes. I think it's one of the issues that was picked up by Ofsted and our response in the Accelerated Progress Plan. So it was interesting listening to the previous conversation about comms, and I think it does resonate in this context as well. So as part of our response to Ofsted in terms of improving outcomes, we are going to be implementing a range of comms strategies to make it easier and clearer for parents to know exactly where to go. What I would say is the first port of call is always the school special needs coordinator. But if a child is undergoing a statutory assessment, then they will have a nominated and designated key worker, and that key worker will be reporting into a family practitioner lead. And what we're looking to do is to make it much clearer who's who in the localities, and that's the strength of the locality model. And that work's already begun.
One of the things, of course, which is an issue, not for the county, but many schools actually don't want to have a SEND child in their school, and will do anything they can to push it off to a special school. And I've heard so many stories about that across the county. So it is an issue, and perhaps we ought to be educating the head teachers of schools to both their statutory duty and their moral duty.
Yeah, just to remind everybody as well that irrespective of anybody can use the SEND local offer that's on the Staffordshire Connect website. So one of the things, again, I would encourage everybody, if a parent initially has some concerns that their youngster may have educational special needs or a disability, as Hallett says, send the SEND coordinator within an educational provision. But if they're not in education yet, then there is the SEND local offer that's on the Staffordshire Connect website, and all schools have a link to it on their website, and similarly all schools are linked on our the SEND local offer. So again, please kind of point people to that direction as well, because there's lots and lots of information for everybody, whether it be professionals, whether it be parents, or again whether it be members of the community.
Saeed?
Thank you, Chair. SEND, special education need children, they need positive influence, encouragement, a life teacher. There is no doubt. Can I just ask your particular attention on page 16, paragraph 18. Yeah. Yeah. In your document, it says that it takes years to implement the green paper. And I'm a bit confused, not frustrated, but my glass is always half full. Can I respectfully ask, something is not in our hand, possibly our local MPs, they can do something about to do the liaison. So in terms of lobbying with them, where are we standing at the moment? Are you getting any positive from our members of parliament to get it? Because without any central guidance, we'll be struggling every step of the way.
Firstly, I'd like to say, although the Green Paper draws on a lot of things that they clearly want in place around special educational needs and disability, a lot of the work within this paperwork we're already doing as an authority. So as far as, if I get the impression that you think perhaps, SEND isn't where it needs to be because the green paper needs to be implemented, but it will take some time. A lot of that work we're already doing, and I do acknowledge, particularly around funding as well, that we certainly need more support. I've personally lobbied my local MP and met with several others as well, and I've also requested a meeting with Nadeem Zahawi to talk about this particular issue, and I'm going to go down to London and see him and discuss just how important this is. But this paper needs to be right, hence the consultation, and again why we're here today. And there are a lot of pushbacks within this as well, so you can read it and go through it and understand that officers particularly who are extremely experienced in SEND don't agree with everything they see within this document. It also is not weak, but it does talk about a lot of things that need to be done, but doesn't actually say how we're going to achieve that, and we will have to lobby hard around that as well, and again particularly around the funding aspect. But you are absolutely right, Syed.
Michael?
Is it on? Thank you, Chair. I'm sure we all welcome the fact that the government has taken an interest in this particular area of concern, and we want to be as constructive as possible within this. So I'd like to follow a number of questions, if I may, with you. First of all, do you see these proposals as bringing ultimately a net benefit to Staffordshire children? If they go through, apart from the fact that it may bring more money, will in fact these proposals benefit Staffordshire children overall? The second question I'd like to ask is, will the proposals, if they go through, cut across some of the good work and systems that are currently in place within Staffordshire, or will they actually support these and enhance them? The third thing I'd like to raise is the one of principle that's brought out, I think, quite an important one, paragraphs 21 to 23, the fact that there does seem to be a kind of tension between the desire for inclusion and the support for SEND work, and on the other hand, the fairly rigorous expectations that are being laid on schools because of the white paper that's come out, and the fact that schools will need to be very, very deeply incentivised to respond to the SEND proposals, alongside the need to maximise their own exam results and Ofsted inspection results and so forth. So will the proposals, in your view, be enough to mitigate the SEND inclusion principle over against these other tensions? Thank you, Chair.
Some really, really good questions there. Yes, I do believe, providing that their feedback that's given is strong enough, and that these comments are taken on board, and that the green paper is then moulded around that information that we're feeding back. And I do believe the DFE are listening. I've met with the Department for Education and given some feedback, including comments from colleagues, and they were very keen to take some of that stuff on board. You talk about some of the things that it's suggesting that actually is cross-cutting, and some of the work that we're doing. A lot of the things in the green paper they talk about are things we're already doing. As I mentioned earlier, the education banding tool is one of those things that we've introduced. And the Department for Education have mentioned that within the green paper. That's something they're very keen to look at, and very keen to look at what we're doing as well. They've taken a keen interest in some of the work that Staffordshire's doing, because with our SEND transformation and the work we've done after we had our written statement of action, is definitely going in the right direction, and we're starting to be looked at as a bit of a model about how the best way to do things. Another thing in the document as well talks about digitised educational healthcare plans and standardising that as well. I think standardising that across the country is extremely important. It talks about digitising those systems, and we're already doing that as well. And there's also information in there around alternative provision, the best use of alternative provision, and right child being in alternative provision, and keeping children in mainstream schools as well. And again, something that Staffordshire has been working on recently and continues to work on is to do those things. So I'm really, really proud of the work we do here. We need to do a lot more, and obviously we will always ask for as much funding as we can get to deliver these things. But we, particularly we've had some additional capital funding that's enabled us to do some of that work. So I'm reasonably aligned to the green paper, although, as I say, it does lack in detail, and obviously, as we know with everything, the proof is in the pudding. The last question, and I've had a couple of conversations with my colleague on the right, and Tim as well actually, who do believe that these documents don't fully align up, which is the green and white paper, which I think was your last question. I'm going to pass on to Hallett, because I know he has some quite strong views around this, and I think he might like to say a few words.
I don't actually have the luxury of having a strength of view. It's more of an evidence base to my views. There does appear to be a clash between both papers, as you quite astutely worked out. I think that diametrically opposed position does need to be thought about by DfE, and we need to be aware of that as well, because on the one hand, the white paper is putting down a very clear marker in the sand in terms of expectations and levels of behaviour, if you like, and it's using a broad brushstroke approach that doesn't really identify individual needs. But on the other hand, the green paper takes a more restorative and individualised approach, which is more in line with the Equalities Act. And I can't see how the two are going to align in any way that's going to mean that in reality, on the ground, what we see in our schools is going to be incentivising inclusion. And that does worry me, and I think that we need to alert central government to that diametrically opposed position, because if we are going to be looking at inclusion in all of our schools, that issue does need to be addressed very strongly.
Does that answer your questions, Michael?
It does, thank you very much. I just wonder whether this committee feels that it ought to make some kind of response to that bit of evidence that we've just heard, to say that the central government does need to clarify this and to take further action about resolving this tension.
Jonathan, did you want to come in?
I mean, that is the purpose of this committee today, is to feed that information back to us, and we will then take that forward. And we agree with your comments, so that will absolutely be taken forward. Some good questions.
David?
Chairman, could I just clarify whether members have sufficient guidance on how they might take specific cases forward? I've always worked on the assumption that you can be alerted to a case, but if you're to pick it up and deal with it, you must have written parental approval. And I just wonder whether that was still the situation. If it was, whether all members were aware of that.
Yes, as Tim said, it is around GDPR and data protection. I intend in a few weeks' time, when we do a members session, that the white paper will be one of those, and the green paper, of course, will be subject of one of our group meetings, and I will give members a briefing on some of this as well. So I might also mention that at the time for those members that aren't aware.
Graham?
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the problems that schools have is that they're very scared of Ofsted, and they're very, very worried about their ranking. And ranking seems to be more important than an individual child. And I think one way around this, and it's a while, Ofsted might have changed, because I haven't done an Ofsted for about 3 years. So, and Ofsted might change. One would be to take all SEND children out of all rankings and have a separate ranking for SEND children, totally different from other children. And that way, it won't affect the school's overall ranking for children that do not have a healthcare plan, whatever it's called nowadays, educational healthcare plan. But those that, I think trying to class all children as the same is the fundamental problem. Ofsted come in and say, and the first thing they do is look at your results. Look at that, you're awful, you're dreadful. And they come in quite bombastic at times. I've had stand-up rows with, when I've been a governor, absolute stand-up rows saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Are you qualified to do this? That's how bad it's got, because they're not looking at the context of what the school is. An inner city school is very, very different from one in a nice leafy suburb. And I've always felt that Ofsted have never taken context into consideration. So perhaps we could suggest that there are a better way if we could divide children and measure them for what we expect each of those groups to do, then that might be a better way of doing it.
Thanks, Graham. Sorry, Tim, I missed you before, so if you wanted to come in, I didn't see your hand go up, sorry.
No, sorry, it was just, again, it probably kind of picks up on the points that you make, Graham, in the sense that, just want to go back to the principles of the white paper, which everybody wants youngsters to attend school. Everybody wants youngsters to do the best that they can do at school. I guess it's the metrics by which those are judged, not those principles. And that kind of aligns to some of the things that you're talking about there, in the sense of how those are measured. One of the things I would be kind of cautious around is, what we don't want to be doing is driving a different kind of performance table around, okay, so we remove youngsters from that performance. It's about how do we come to a conclusion about the overall performance of an individual education establishment, and what are they providing for their school community, and that's the kind of the direction that we need to be looking at. Because just picking up on a point that you made previously around schools and behaviours of some schools, all schools want to do the best for their youngsters, and actually they feel as though they're sometimes being driven down a particular route, and it's not about their overall philosophy. Because if you look at every school will say we're an inclusive school. It's about how we judge that and how we measure that is I think is something that we have to change.
Jonathan?
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, the way that Ofsted does its inspections, I know that it's more inclusive focused and less result driven, but it still isn't where obviously I would like it to be. You can remove children from standardised testing, etc., if there are extreme cases, and you can put that forward, and I know that a school can do that. But I wouldn't like to see a complete cohort of children removed from those exams and then and as Tim alluded to, you end up with two standards of testing. For me, that's not being fully inclusive, and that's something which I would have an issue with. As far as fully inclusive schools, Tim is right. Schools clearly want to do their best for the children, and sometimes are forced in a position where they do struggle. However, I don't feel that every school in Staffordshire, and I don't care which schools listening to this would disagree with me because they're wrong. I don't think every school in Staffordshire is currently inclusive at all. And that is a big problem. We're working closer with schools, and we have an alternative provision panel as well that meets every Tuesday to make sure that those children who are on the cusp of exclusion or permanently excluded or high fixed term exclusions, and to try and work out the reasons behind that to try and keep them in school. I do feel some schools can certainly do more. I think the work around Senko, further education for Senkos or the new qualifications will certainly help in that respect, but there is much more I feel some schools need to do to consider themselves to be fully inclusive. Perhaps they feel they are inclusive but have never been to a school with a high proportion of SEND children to actually realise what being fully inclusive is really about. I mean, I was fortunate to be chair of governors for a small primary for some years until I got this role, and then I was no longer allowed to do that. And I know that I'd worked with the county and Tim to make sure that we were fully inclusive. And I'd had conversations with the head as well and said, where do we want to be? We'd like to be outstanding, but we are fully inclusive here, and sometimes it creates a problem with our exam results. But Ofsted recognised that, and we got good with a lot of outstanding features and still managed to educate a lot of SEND children, a high proportion, with some challenging difficulties. So it can be done, but hopefully this green paper and more support will help, because ultimately we want to make sure that unless they're completely complex needs, that schools are supported by us and mainstream are still being able to keep those SEND children within their cohort, because I'd like to keep them in mainstream. I'm a father of a SEND child. He goes to a local mainstream school. They have excellent results, and he is doing very well. So it can be done. Some schools just struggle with that, and as I said, that's what we're here to do, to try and support them, as well as the Regional Schools Commissioner and others to do that. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Saeed?
Thank you, Chair. Being a learner of the legal professions, can I just ask a particular attention to one point about the retainer or when a letter of engagement? We need a support when we deal with individual cases. I know in the past there are so many occasions we deal with the individual cases. How we engage our residents in this to cover especially the GDPR as well? If we can get any kind of legal format to cover our case study, that would be hugely appreciated. And on the other hand, with the inclusions, I think I would like to convey a message to the central government through this forum as well. Why inclusion is so necessary in the long run. It's going to save the money as well for the offer. Because, and also as a parents, they don't want any segregations or anything. I should choose my word carefully. So inclusion is always welcome from the parents' perspective and the community as well. Thank you.
Bernard?
Thank you, Chair. I think when a storm's coming, you prepare for the storm. And the situation, let's just take South Staffordshire, where we've got the local plan. We're talking about a possibility over the next 10 years of 12,000 extra homes. Now, I know this is happening somewhere also, like Lichfield, for instance. And when you consider that when people put in planning applications, what's expected is that education will be covered with an S106 that doesn't always give the people what they want. But I think we've got the situation coming where, with the greater influx of people coming our way, we need information before it happens so that we can prepare for it. And I don't think we're getting that. I don't think we're getting that at all, particularly in South Staffordshire. So what I would simply say is that we need information, because once it's left, by having the planning application pushed through a district, there's an awful lot of responsibility on the county council. And that's not just for schools, it's for health as well, and various other things that we have to cover. So what we need is some kind of input into the different areas that have got these, let me just say, applications that are going to come through for the Black Country. And it's not just a few houses we're talking about many thousands of houses, which is going to change everything that we do within South Staffordshire, without a doubt, from being just a series of small villages into certainly a series of very large villages. So I think somewhere along the line we need to be involved in the local plans of these different people, different areas, so that we know what's going to happen and we have prior knowledge of that. Chairman.
Jonathan, I'm not sure that's your area, but if you want to come in.
I mean, we're talking about the Green Paper in particular today, but I will just answer that question for Bernard. I mean, I spoke to the school organisation team here, who are excellent, by the way. And I said, right, how do we know what we need to build and where do we need to build it? Oh, we've got all the data. We can tell you how many houses. We can accurately, fairly accurately, not to the number, work out how many children per housing estate, where we're going to need future schools, and that work's being done, and we're building those schools. And there's prime example, Stafford. We know we need a school on Marston Grange. We know how many houses will be built on that local plan. We know how big the school's going to need to be. We know when we need to put the shovel in the ground. The biggest issue for me, so all that work's being done, Bernard, and we are very good at that. The biggest issue for me, and I'm going to raise it today because it's a real bugbear for me, is that the builders are coming back with viability studies saying you've asked me for 106 money for secondary school provision and primary school provision. Can't afford that. We're not going to be able to build those houses if we have to give you all that money. However, if you drop one of those elements, and we had one recently in Stafford, if you drop the 106 element for secondary provision, we'll still give you the primary if you want. You know, we don't have to, but we will. And the planning committee had no option but to go down that path. So we are slowly but surely finding less. And this is my worry going forward in the future, is that 106 monies will be contested more and more by developers. And we don't have an empty bottomless pit to build new schools and put school places in through our basic needs pot. We don't have that, and we rely on 106 monies to support that. So we as an authority are going to have to start getting much tougher with developers on that and say, look, if you're going to bring children here, you've got to put some form of monies forward to enable us. Can't answer you on doctor surgeries, but I do agree, although to be fair, you can build as many surgeries as you want, you've got to fill them with GPs, and that's the biggest problem. But I can assure you that our school orgs team is very, very good. And if they're aware of things in your local plan, they will plan years ahead to make sure they know what's required and where it's required, Bernard.
Any further questions or comments? No? Okay, we've got 2 recommendations for this report. The first one is to note the contents of the SEND review. We don't use the word note, please, if we can help it. It just means that you don't have to read it, in my opinion, if you note a report. Right support, right place, right time. And then B is to provide comments to support the County Council response to the consultation. We've done that. Are we all happy that with those recommendations? All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Jonathan, sorry.
Just wanted to say thank you again for allowing us to come and speak today. And I have to say some of the questions, in fact, all the questions were excellent questions. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to hear those and feed those back. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you, gentlemen, for your time. You're free to leave. Thank you very much. So we move straight on to the work programme. So the next meeting we've got is July the 7th. And on that, we've got the highways transformation, and there are a couple of changes, sorry. Let me just get the one I scribbled over. Here we go. So the town centre regeneration, we've had a note from Anthony Hodge if we can put that back till they're ready. So on the Thursday, the 7th of July, we've got Highways Transformation Programme, again, the 3-strand progress even. We've got HS2 connectivity, and we've got some guests coming in on that one. And we've got the flood risk management, again, which is Daryl's team. So that's 3 items on the agenda. David?
I chaired the funding committee yesterday, charities and various things, and Councillor Winnington raised the point when we were listening to funding that goes through one of our charities to make money available for sixth form and for progress through the education system. He was asking that organisation might report back to a scrutiny panel. I didn't think it was suitable to come back to a scrutiny panel because it was dealing specifically with their organisation. But what did come out of the meeting was that it might really be very well worthwhile to come to this committee to have a report on the progress of education within Staffordshire and how people were progressing, whether we were coping well in the post-COVID period. And I just thought I'd make you aware of that.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll add that to the list of work that we want to stream, and we'll look at when we can fit that in. So let's just deal with the 7th of July. So we've got the Highways Transformation Programme. We've got the HS2 connectivity with guests from Avanti West Coast, and we've got flood risk management. Everybody happy with July's meeting? Now I need to talk to you about the 29th of September meeting, because as you can see, it goes on forever. So my proposal to you all is that on the 29th of September, we keep the local air quality plan, we keep the school's white paper, and we keep highways transformation and economic recovery and renewal, which is just the 6 monthly update. And then we take off everything that Victoria is doing, basically. Because I just believe that if we should have the cabinet member here for everything they need to do, rather than keep bringing them in. So we're proposing to put in an extra meeting for the 19th of October, which is a Wednesday. And on that, we will have the Countryside Review update, Staffordshire History Centre update, Libraries and Arts update, and the Chasewater Vision, which is currently not programmed, but we're going to put that all together and remove it from the 29th of September because we might be here all day. Is that, they've not... Sorry, Jonathan.
It isn't, Chairman, I'm afraid.
It's at 2 o'clock.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Victoria's not available in the morning, so it's going to be a 2 o'clock meeting on Wednesday, the 19th of October. And then we'll look at what else we need to cover for the rest of the schedule. Myself, Peter and Jonathan and Ross will meet and look at what else we can put on. Everybody happy with that, that we've moved Victoria's items to an extra meeting in October? Can I have a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Graham. And a seconder? Thanks, Peter. So we're happy with that, Jonathan, okay? September the 29th is at 10 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Jonathan?
Final point on the note, Chairman, about the invitation from Safeguarding Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. So the Safeguarding Overview and Scrutiny Committee are asking members of this committee to attend their meeting on Thursday, the 1st of September, to consider the children's transformation. Michael, are you able to attend that?
I was asked to.
Yes, that's fine. Does anybody else wish to attend? So we can send Michael as our representative. Happy with that? That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Could you confirm the date of that, please?
Yeah, Jonathan will send that all to you. It's the 1st of September, but it doesn't tell me what time. Okay. David?
Only just to make members aware that both you and I sit on the climate change subcommittee.
Yep.
That their meeting for this week, without any reason at all, was cancelled. I find it surprising that this council considers that member input into climate change is dealt with by a subcommittee of an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It doesn't seem to place the importance on the climate change agenda which we need to be pushing forward. I find that disappointing, and then to find that a meeting without any notice at all is just suddenly cancelled. No explanation, no nothing. And I think that we might want to ask some questions about that.
Okay, that's duly noted, David. We'll speak to Simon Tagg, is it?
No, it's Conor Wildman.
There's not anymore.
Oh, what's he?
No. We'll discuss that. So all that leaves us is for me to say thank you very much for your attendance today, and I'll close the meeting at 15:25, and I'll see you, if not before, on July the 7th. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
So what's up?